welcome to Gaming the System. I got thrown by double music there and being on the screen, and the fact that 2 seconds ago I spilled 7-Up all over my keyboard. But anyway, other soft drinks are available. Welcome to Gaming the System. We are 4 intersectional feminists looking at gaming through a feminist lens. Tonight, I'm very excited because there's daylight coming in my window for the first time ever. But I'm also, we are going to be looking exactly through our feminist lens and saying, gaming is a feminist issue. What's that all about? So I'm going to dive straight in today and ask our panel why, for them, gaming is a feminist issue. But don't forget, we are live. We are getting your social media comments. We love hearing from you. Please do join in. So if you have any thoughts about why gaming is a feminist issue and what that means to you, please do put them in the chat. But in the meanwhile, why do you see gaming as a feminist issue? I'm coming straight to Jem. What do you think?
Yeah. Well, I have had a big long think about this earlier today, actually, and I think it ties into basically everything. So I had a whole long explanation, long thought about it, because I have studied psychology, I've studied sociology, I've studied social anthropology. I've been fascinated by the way that humans interact, and I think what it has all told me is that everything is connected, and that our society and our culture is entirely socially constructed by how we make it. So I think that means that everything is a feminist issue, because everything impacts on feminism and everything impacts on how society interacts, how people interact, and how we develop as a culture. So from that perspective, I feel that it boils down to that big long thought process that I had today, boils down to the fact that I think everything is important, and I think that something that is culturally impactful, like gaming, something that we talk a lot about computer games here, but we also want to talk about other games, board games and role-playing games and all sorts of things. So, you know, gaming is something that a lot of people do, so it has a big impact on a lot of people, and I think therefore it's something that has a big impact on our society. So if it is reinforcing negative stereotypes or gender inequality, then it reinforces those things in the wider society. So I think it's essential that we recognize it and that we deal with it. I also think that play is a very impactful thing. So the fact that you're playing, if that's has the lessons that we learn through play impact how we behave in society. So I think those are why I think gaming is a feminist issue.
Yeah, and I agree with everything you said, so I'm not even going to add anything. Matt, why do you want to tell us gaming a feminist issue? Why? Matt, I can't hear you, unfortunately, right now. We haven't silenced Matt. We don't silence men on this podcast.
Okay, how about now?
Yes, we can hear you now, Matt.
Cool. So, massive. I don't know if you could probably all see me while I was preparing. I was desperately trying to get headphones to work, and nothing was fucking working, and then sliding my door shut surreptitiously. And also, asterisks, I've just poured myself a massive vodka and Coke, and I put the vodka in first, and then I stupidly decided to use a straw. So I basically just took a shot of vodka straight up.
So you're ready to tell us why gaming's a feminist
ready to go.
Yeah.
So gaming feminist issue, such a good point by you, Jem, about if it influences society, then it is by nature a feminist issue, because everything to do with society is impacts women in a disproportionate way to cisgender straight white men, and the way that the gaming industry and gaming itself is a microcosm for the general ills of society, and reinforcing and just not just reinforcing but prolonging the problematic side of everything to do with gaming. Because if you don't bring in the diversity, and diversity is the answer to everything, that's what I always say, then you're just going to keep on going around in the same circles, and it's not going to get better. And feminism makes everything better. Diversity makes everything better. So if you want the best games, the best experience, just from a purely selfish point of view, then you need to get your feminist glasses on and start viewing the world through, well, more like taking your patriarchal glasses off and start experiencing the world that way.
Yeah, it's hard though, because we our patriarchal glasses start getting built from almost year dot, and they sort of it becomes harder and harder to get them off and struggle back on those feminist lenses. I may have taken the metaphor too far. Alex, gaming is a feminist issue. Why?
Yes, this is quite a big question, and I'm not sure I have much more to add to Jem and Matt, but I will try with a slightly unnuanced and relatively new feminist glasses view, I would say. I think in gaming, I think like a lot of popular culture, it reflects society in the same ways. Like Jem was saying, how it is basically a reflection of society in how women are misrepresented, and sometimes there's not enough representation of women in the right way, and it's always sort of from a particular viewpoint, so the male gaze or some other male aspect of looking at women, and that's not right, and it needs to change, and we need to think about how we can rebuild our popular culture to look at things from different perspectives, would be my take on it. But again, I'm not sure how much more to add, so I think I'll stop there.
No, go on, Matt.
Yes.
Can I just bounce off one quick thing you just reminded me of Alex? Which was you talking about there's representation and then there's the right kind of representation.
Mm-hmm.
So I've been playing Metal Gear Solid 5 again solidly for the last week, and it's a masterpiece. It's a technical masterpiece. Story is utterly brilliant. But it's where that's the game with Quiet in, the naked sniper. And it turns out that she's actually utterly superfluous to the story. She doesn't matter in the story whatsoever, because in the first mission you meet her, you're given the choice to spare her and bring her back to Mother Base, or you can just shoot her in the head and she doesn't appear in the story, and the story carries on without. So that's just
yeah, not good. And it's stuff like that. So as far as I'm aware, and if this is incorrect, probably one of you three knows that I'm the only person who's spoken about video games at the Women's Equality Party conferences ever. And I did bring a motion in 2018 about how we needed to be looking at this. And so got a little bit of my speech here. But just the stats that I said then, because I remember when I was writing the speech, my other half said to me, he said, look, you've got to make people understand why this matters to women very simply. Why is it? Because people still think gaming is about teenage boys. There are a lot of people out there who don't game, and they don't get why this matters. In fact, why it matters, even if it is just teenage boys, is another thing. But the facts that I had then, and this is from 2018, but that a comprehensive study of UK residents and their pastimes showed that the average age of a video game player was 43 years old, and that a quarter of all players are aged 56 or older, and that women are more likely to play games than men. And we've talked about how, yes, this involves a lot of different games, but that's still true. That figure is still completely true. It doesn't mean it's not true. I also like to point out the rest of it, which is the fact that people who play games are more likely to consume culture, read, paint, attend performances, go to libraries, and people who play games growing up were more likely to obtain better educational qualifications, which I think is a very important point to remind people of. But I think that's the big thing for me, is the fact is that women, in the same way that I'm always shocked by the lack of women's representation everywhere when women are 51% of the global population, because just statistics, rules of averages say that if there has to be a structural barrier to explain why they're not represented at that sort of percentage. In gaming, again, women are the gamers. Women are there, and so it's this, what are the structural barriers? For me, feminist is a gaming issue. No, gaming is a feminist issue. It's because what are those structural barriers that are stopping women being the relevant part of gaming that they should be? Yes, Matt.
So I've been with everything that's going on in American politics at the minute, and especially that, worryingly, our government is just taking all the wrong lessons from the Trump administration of how the Trump administration just got away with everything. So when they looked at the Black Lives Matter protest, they didn't think, oh wow, there's a terrible problem and people we need to change things in order to solve the problem that the people are protesting about. What they saw was the police cracking down and cracking the skulls of protesters, and they went, it's much nicer to do that. And you know what we'll do? We'll set up a racism commission that will find that we're completely A-star marks on racism, and then we'll just carry on as if nothing's happened. And the way that works, and the way that this ties into the gaming industry and many other industries, is there's propaganda and gaslighting that stands in the way, because there is nothing that propaganda cannot neutralize or sell. Propaganda is what enables people to say, oh, we don't want female protagonists because they don't sell very well. And then you look at the facts and go, oh, actually, some of the biggest games ever have female protagonists. The female protagonists are leading the way in some of the most interesting and fascinating games and stories. And it's all because the patriarchy is built on propaganda, because facts just do not support it. And so that's what I'm really interested in at the minute, is the propaganda that props up things like, particularly our government, our establishment media, the BBC, letting them get away with everything. They're supposed to protect us from lunatic, misogynistic, racist, philandering, like he's got like 14 children, Boris Johnson.
He's describing Boris Johnson, isn't it? Yeah.
Yeah. And he should have been completely locked out of politics when he was like 18 when he wrote this. I could talk forever about this, so I'll shut up and carry on.
It's fair enough, and we could do a different podcast entirely on that. But you know, your point about how it's the sort of the propaganda and the way it's, so it was just made me think of one of the things I was looking at was the fact that, so Jade Raymond, who I suspect Alex probably knows who she is, because she was the head of the EA Motive Studios when they were making games like Star Wars Battlefront 2 and the Assassin's Creed games. And she was like this woman who was being promoted as like, look, we've got a woman at the forefront of stuff. And the voices online were just going, nah, it's just a front. She couldn't really have designed those games. She's just being put up as a PR exercise. When of course, like, obviously these were the sort of games that she wanted to see. And I mean, Ketch has, you know, added in our comment here, thank you Ketch, long-term viewer, about gaming is growing and growing, and it has the opportunity to grow in the right ways or wrong ways. And I agree, it's about getting it right now. But one of the things I always find very frustrating with feminism is when people say, yeah, but you know, look, we're getting there, it's getting so much better. And I remember being 17 years old, which was a while ago, and being told the exact same thing, saying, yeah, in a few years' time, we'll have equality. It'll all be sorted. It'll all be fine. And my frustration with these things comes from how slow and how it feels like we take steps backward all the time. I mean, Alex, do you think things have got better since you were younger in terms of feminism and gaming?
That's a good question. I think some of the things that were bad have obviously improved, but there's now like new aspects to the bad things in the way that gaming has changed, and the way that we game in general also has changed, obviously, since I was little. So there's, like, obviously with the expansion of the internet and online gaming, that's brought in a whole raft of like new issues to be dealing with, as well as opportunities. Obviously, we've got to think about the positive side of things as well, but it is a big question, so it's tricky one for me to answer, but I think there's probably trade-ins for like for likes in terms of how we've progressed over the years and also taken steps back. But I can't think of any specific things right off the top of my head. Jem and Matt could probably know, I'm sure.
Well, I was going to say, like, I'm hoping that you're more optimistic about it being slightly younger. Jem, are you as jaded and cynical as me?
I think it has got better, actually. I do think it has got better. I think more women are obviously working in the games industry, and we know that that's how you work towards equality. So I think that has got better. I think there is a problem with this sort of online gaming situation and how women are treated online. And I think there is a risk, and I think we're seeing this across the board online, actually, of women being hounded out of those areas because there are some men who feel like this is a male-only space and that women are only there to be pretty and to make them feel better or to be a target for their aggression. So I think there is a risk of that happening, and I think we need to be mindful and we need to be kind of on the ball with that, because it's not enough to say women are designing more games, there are more female characters in games, you know, all of the games are getting more accessible for women and women are playing more games. That's it, job done. Like you're saying, Caroline, you know, we're always told, you know, because we've now got this one example of like things being more fair, that we have to accept that that's the win, that's okay, and it's fine that we've only got whatever 30%, you know, women in Parliament and things like that. You know, it's I've probably got that number wrong. You probably know that, Caroline. But you know, we're told that that's enough, and we should stop moaning about it and get on with our lives. But I think that I do think that there is a risk that if we don't keep vigilant, then there will be backsliding. And I think that, you know, as people feel more comfortable, as people think that that we've solved some of the problems, I think that we risk putting other issues on, become more problematic. So
yeah, I was just trying to find the Ruth Bader Ginsburg quote there, who is Supreme Court Justice, who sadly died last year. And one of the things she was I won't get the quote exactly right, but basically she kept being asked, well, how many women on the Supreme Court is enough? And her response was, well, nobody's ever minded that there's 9 men on the Supreme Court. And so why couldn't there be a situation where there was 9 women? And it's that sort of like, and it is like that tokenistic, if we don't keep an eye out, then it goes back. And of course, and Matt, it would be better if you could talk about this rather than me wittering on constantly. I feel I'm talking too much today.
I've talked more than you, definitely.
But we're not just talking, because we are intersectional feminists, we're not just talking about better representation of women, are we? We want to talk about how this is the same for minority groups, and well, it's not even the same, it's worse for minority groups, and how we need to see better representation across the board. Would you agree?
Absolutely. So I've had this resounding reflection in my head recently, thinking about patriarchy and how the sense of belonging. And this is something I want to go into more in our next episode, which is going to be about accessibility and disability, which we're going to film after this. And it's the message that the patriarchy sends through all of its channels in every place and everywhere you might want to go. And it's that unless you're a cisgender straight white man, this is in majority white countries, then you don't fucking belong here. We are tolerating you. You're female, you're black, you're gay, you're trans, you're disabled, you've got mental illnesses. You don't fucking belong here. And then that's the weight of the oppressive voice that the patriarchy just punches into everyone. So when someone says, oh, you've got like 10% of women on this board, for example, they're going, you've got enough, all right? We're letting you in here. We're accommodating you because you're so you're here to make us look good, basically. So just shut up and sit there in the corner. And that's exactly the same in video gaming spaces. So online, a woman goes in there, and they're going to be attacked. And unless the top-down message of the patriarchy needs to be taken off the table in order for everyone to come together and think we all belong here. This is everyone's space. And there's so much potential for gaming to take that place, because everyone who consumes it has an opportunity to fight that fight. And I hope that it is going in the right direction.
Yeah, I think there's sort of two strands of the ways I wanted to look at like feminism in gaming today, which is, I suppose, there's the bit we were talking about in terms of game design and whether there's women in the industry and where it is. And I was going to talk about Ready Player 2 by Shira Chess, which is nothing to do with Ready Player 1, which I could also discuss, though, in terms of feminism as a gaming issue. But and they talk about how the gaming industry had this assumption of what a woman is. And so when the gaming industry was like, oh, we must make games for women, it was based on a cisgendered, white, middle-class, able-bodied, straight woman, and assuming that she probably, does shopping and various things, and likes to look after her children, and would like everything to be pink. And there was that even when the gaming industry tries to do feminism, it gets it wrong so often, which is just astoundingly so sometimes. But what you were just saying then trigger me to think about Ready Player One, which I haven't read the book, I'll admit, but I did watch the film. And it's one of the things that struck me with the film is that you've got all these characters who, on the surface, we're looking at a diverse, wonderful world of people from different races and backgrounds and things, and they all manage to come together. And isn't it wonderful? Because in this virtual world, they can all be whoever they want. But the lead character is obviously still a straight, white, cisgendered guy who also has a lot in common with those sort of 90s tropes of like, oh, you should really all fall in love with and fancy the absolute useless guy who will never do anything with his life.
He's not even attractive.
So
they could have at least made him attractive.
But I genuinely think there were some really damaging tropes in the 90s in terms of like Wayne's World and Bill and Ted and Airheads and all that stuff of like the absolute loser guy is the one that you should love, which again leads into incel culture. Anyway, it all links. But the female character who's supposedly ugly and disfigured, I mean, since she's all that, there hasn't been a worse transformation of like, oh no, she's got a bit of a birthmark. She's also stunningly beautiful. And then the black female character doesn't. Anyway, I've gone on a rant, sorry. But my point is, I did have a point. The two that film actually explains where the two bits of feminism that I wanted to talk about converge. So there's the gaming industry and its need to improve in what games are, but there's this side we keep hinting at about the internet and about interactivity, and that being one of the new dangers and one of the new problems for women. And I say it all the time on here. You go on that Gamer Girls subreddit, and every other post is, oh, I had to turn off my mic because all these people piled on. Oh, I can't ever talk in a gaming lobby. I mean, women are literally being excluded from a large part of what gaming is because of the fact that they don't want to turn on their mics. I know we talked about it a bit before, but like, Alex, you said you don't play games like that at all. Do you feel like you're missing out on part of gaming because of not being able to do that?
But when you've sold it so well, Caroline.
Right. Exactly. But no, I don't think so, because I enjoy what I enjoy, and I don't tend to enjoy those types of games. So I'm quite happy playing the games that I do play, which is mostly single player with co-op with people I choose to play with, rather than random people online. So I wouldn't say that I feel like I'm missing out. No.
I mean, Jem, you've talked about it in terms of you've been going back to new World of Warcraft games, and we've both said as well as that now we're a bit older, we're more confident putting on the mic. But I sometimes think, God, wouldn't it be easier if I was just a bloke and get in the mic and not worry about these things?
I have to say, I never worried about it. I mean, it was never something that bothered me. I think because I basically grew up online. And so when I was 11, I was doing my first sort of online gaming back in the day when they weren't really games. I tell my daughter about it. She's like, what, like like Fortnite? And I'm like, no. Like a text game. But anyway, so I think I kind of got used to men being like, oh, it's a woman, and it didn't really bother me so much, because I was kind of like, yeah, okay, yeah, I am, and you have to deal with that. And I definitely went through a phase of enjoying the attention. I definitely went through a phase of taking advantage of that attitude, neither of which I'm very proud of. But that was me growing up. That was me learning about being a woman in the world. And I think when you're dealing with this kind of gender inequality, you've got to use everything that comes to hand, really. And I think that was definitely something. But so it's not really worried me. I think the problem comes when you get corralled into a space where you feel that you either have to be that person, that boring person who doesn't want to talk about sex or doesn't want to flirt, or you get corralled into being like, oh, you're the token woman in a guild or in a group or something like that. Or what I experienced, which was being targeted because I was the partner of somebody that was in the positions of power in the games that I was playing. So I became the person, because they didn't want to go after him, they would go after me. And so I think that there are really problematic issues around it, but I don't think I ever felt scared to admit that I was female or scared to be a woman in that environment. But I definitely felt that it added an additional layer onto my gaming experience. And I suppose for some people who perhaps come into this later, or who are not, perhaps I was lucky with the environments that I was in and the groups that I was with. I think it can be quite exhausting. I think that's the thing that I've learned over the years in exploring feminism, exploring intersectionality, and exploring privilege, is that what people experience, from the cis women to cis white women to through all of the groups that we've talked about who are not basically cis white men, it's exhausting, it's tiring. And when you're gaming, you want to have fun, you don't have to deal with all of that. So no, it didn't worry me, but I do think it is a problem, and I think it's a problem. And the more challenging your life is, or the more challenge, if you have mental health issues, or you have physical health issues, or you're just tired, you don't want to have to deal with that at the end of the day. So you just go and do something else instead. You sit and play Puzzle Bobble, because you don't have to deal with somebody on an online game.
Yeah, I mean, Matt, we sort of say this like, it's very difficult for a woman to be involved. But, obviously you as a good male ally and as a good ally to many groups, do you ever find that, would you avoid these? I mean, I know, again, it's not your sort of games, but I mean, I find sometimes the environment is tiring because, and in the same way Jem's just described, of, I'm going to have to confront this because I can't be the person who sits there and lets the racist, sexist, homophobic, ableist chat carry on. But I'm not here to give everybody a lecture today, and I'm not here to do that. I mean, again, it's those sort of online spaces. How do you feel about online spaces as an ally?
So you're right, I don't really engage with online spaces. Mainly I've discovered I don't really like people. The vast majority of people are just not worth bothering with. And so if you're coming just across a random group of people online, so it's unlikely that you're going to get on particularly well. One, with cisgender straight white men, we have the privilege of being able to blend in anywhere, because everywhere is it's sort of implied that it's built for us. We're the ones that are told you belong here. So I could, as a part of just a thing about being an ally, I can switch off at the end of the day. I can go, all right, I'm just going to go for a walk, and just be myself, and then no one will be able to tell that I'm a trans ally, and that I celebrate trans people, and that when I follow loads of trans people on Twitter and celebrate them. I think it's wonderful, and I'm so proud of them. But I can walk through the street and have no one have any idea that that's what my position is. And the same as I can go onto any gaming place and they would think, oh, this is just another bloke who probably loves football and beer and pubs, the kind of bloke that Boris Johnson thinks every man in the United Kingdom is. So it's, like you say, Jem, gaming is a place where you want to go and have fun. It should be a place that has no weight or baggage attached to it. But it's just, it can be spoiled by arseholes. And the further away you are from an able-bodied cisgender straight white man, the more weight is put on you the second you enter any environment. So my perspective as trying to be the best ally that I'm able to be is that, particularly from a mental illness perspective, I have depression, anxiety, and chronic pain as well. So it's important to realize that you have capacity. You can't fight every fight. So you need to pick your battles. So maybe if I went online and there was this assholes just talking horrible shit about trans people, gay people, or black people, that's not a battle that is going to have a big impact in the grand scheme of things. So it's far better to choose your battles. First, I think there's a tremendous amount of guilt that comes along with allies thinking we're not doing enough, we're not doing it. It should be our job to safeguard the people that we're allies with, when it's not. That's not our job. Our job is to support and to do what we can when we can. So that's what I avoid it anyway, just because I don't care.
No, just because people are awful. That's fair enough. No, well, and I was thinking there as well, though. It's like, I mean, I feel like I do give multiplaying a bad rap, and I have Rust servers that I play on that I have nice environments on. Genuinely, you find they're generally the ones with the older players, but not always. And there are some, I really enjoyed some voice chat on it. I really enjoyed some of the social interaction on it. And one of the ones that I play on a lot, I know that occasionally what will happen is some new little brats, shall we call them, turn up and try and do I'm Trump, isn't it funny, and MAGA, and far worse. And they usually get we usually just don't pay them attention and they get bored because they think. But then they also, I mean, I remember recently somebody was saying some really awful stuff and somebody else challenged it, and I was like, oh, it's not going to be me who has to challenge it. And it, again, psychology, once one person challenges, it makes everyone else feel more able to step up. And there are good gaming communities out there. Not everyone is awful, Matt. There are some nice people out there, and I like having.
Can I just come in? Actually, I think. Well, firstly, yes, there are some really wonderful communities out there, and I have met so many amazing, awesome people entirely online. My husband being one of them, and I think it's not something to not get involved in. So I want to be here to say that even if you are female or you're not basically the norm that is the male apparently, then still get involved in it, because it can be incredibly rewarding and so much fun, and you can meet awesome people. What I was thinking though, and I noticed that Daniel said that has sexism got worse in the last sort of 15 years, and I actually think that's an interesting point, because I think that in some ways, no, as I was saying earlier, but I also think that there has been a bit of a backlash against the more, like when I was in the gaming world, when I first was in the gaming world, I was a novelty. So initially I was very young and female. So I was, as I said, 11, 12, and most of the men that I was gaming with, or the boys that I was gaming with, were 16 and up. So I was surrounded by older men who actually, to their credit, all did actually care for me and look after me, and they, you know, didn't take advantage of me in any way that I was aware of at the time. But you know, they so that there was that. So I was a novelty. So I was something to, you know, and that had its own set of issues. But I think nowadays that isn't the case so much. You know, there are a lot of women out there gaming, as we've said, and so I think there is a bit of that whole thing, as Matt was talking about, like, you're in our space now. You know, it was nice when there was just a few of you and we could have some fun, but now we're a bit worried that maybe you're going to come in here and, you know, make everything pink and, you know, not make us sandwiches and, you know, all of that stuff. And there's a little bit of like a fear, and I think that's, you know, that goes out into the wider culture, sort of bringing it back to like, how does this impact society, or how does society impact this, you know, because we have this attitude at the moment that we have this sort of zero-sum game attitude that, like, if more people get more equality, then other people have less, you know, and that seems to be this thing that's running through everything. So if more women game, then somehow this is going to negatively impact the gaming experience for all these white men, which, if they sit down for 5 seconds and think about it, they'll realize is not the case. But I do think that is what's sort of fueling this underlying fear. And so I think that the sexism is probably more overt and more aggressive when it comes out than it was back in, you know, 15 years ago or whatever.
That's such a good point.
I mean, I sometimes wonder, because of the fact, like, so I always flash back to like one of my light bulb flashbulb memories, as they are, and this is when Glenda Jackson came to talk to my school about, well, all sorts of things, but women in politics, I presume, was the main point. And she was talking about glass ceilings and blah, blah, blah. And smug little privileged Caroline over here, who was 17 years old at the time and thought she knew the whole world, sort of put her hand up and went, yeah, but like, women's equality sorted now, isn't it? You know, there aren't really any glass ceilings, blah, blah, blah. And Glenda Jackson, to be fair, didn't come back with the best answer, but I now see more what she meant, which is she came back with the answer. She said, there are still pubs in this country that women don't feel comfortable going into. Now, unfortunately, that caused raucous laughter from the sixth form behind me, because they knew there was no pub that Caroline wouldn't be found in on a regular basis. But what I understand now is about that, there are about the spaces, about while there are still spaces that people don't feel comfortable going into, while there are still spaces that are inhospitable to those people, there are barriers that need to be fixed and there are changes that need to be made. And I've been finding a lot now with streaming and lockdown and all that. Obviously, a lot of our shows from the 90s are available. And again, in the 90s, we thought we were there. And it comes back to Daniel was saying, you know, people think that history is a straight line, just moving towards better, and it will get better. And in the 90s, there was this general feeling of, we've got equality, there's no racism, no sexism, no homophobia. And like, oh my God, you watch shows back from the 90s now, and the homophobia is unbelievable. It's sort of, you know, I mean, Friends, there's all these running gags that are just awful. But it was like, yeah, we're fine. So I think it's that we need to keep challenging these things. We can't sit back and get lackadaisical about how we are approaching gaming and say, yeah, well, there's some women in gaming now, it's okay. Yeah, Gamergate happened, but, you know, that was just some gits. We have to keep pushing. For me, it's like we have to keep sort of getting at them and punching them and jabbing and crossing. Sorry, I've just gone into a boxercise routine now, so I'll start. I mean, Alex, as a young woman, I know you're like, you are a grown up, it's fine. Do your generation still see feminism as important?
Yes, absolutely.
Question.
That's a big question again. Like, I'll just speak for my whole generation. And yes,
no pressure.
Yeah. Okay. Well, as a person in her very early 30s, I would say they probably do. Yes, I would hope so. I think we're thinking a lot about a lot of different isms these days, and I think with recent events particularly, feminism has been thrown to the forefront of a lot of people's minds, and hopefully will continue to be there moving forward, and not just a flash in the pan, as so often is in the media these days. When there's ever a big negative event or anything newsworthy that happens, it's always here to take on tomorrow kind of thing. So we have to work to keep it in front of people's minds, really, which is what you were saying just now, Caroline. I think it's interesting when we think about this last year. Obviously 2020 has been absolutely like nothing we've ever gone through before, and I picked up watching a bit of the BAFTAs recently, the gaming BAFTAs, that more people have come to gaming than ever before, apparently, according to what they've had a look into. And I suspect from the way they were talking about it, the majority were women. So it'd be interesting to see the sort of legacy from the pandemic years, and how that impacts gaming as a piece of our popular culture. Gone off tangent there, but yeah.
No, I hadn't thought about that as much, and you are right. The statistics are showing more people have gained in the last year. I mean, this time last year, I was getting messages from a lot of friends saying, "So gaming, what is it? How do I get something?" I was explaining to people how to install Steam so they could play Jackbox games with their friends online. There was
definitely a lot of the social aspects of gaming that was a big thing for the pandemic. I think, definitely, it's a good way of staying in touch with people when you can't see them in person.
And after you've done too many just staring at each other's Zoom calls, just going, right, how's life? Shit.
Yeah, it gives you something else to be doing while you talk, doesn't it?
I did stop asking people how they were at one point. I might start asking again soon. You never know. People are getting better now. Fingers crossed. So I would like to call this bit of the show the What Has Caroline Forgot? So we're getting near the end of the show. I've got a wild card question coming up for you in a bit, but I figure at this point you've all probably gone, why hasn't Caroline brought this up in terms of feminism and gaming? And this is you on the panel, your chance to interrupt me and say, Caroline, why haven't we talked about this? So I shall go in alphabetical order. Alex, what anything I've forgotten?
I think we've covered quite a large majority, I would say. Probably someone's going to say something obvious in a second. Let me think. I'll give myself 5 seconds.
I can come back to you. We don't have to do it alphabetical.
Okay. I'll have to think.
Jen, what about you?
Gosh, I was just hoping that M came before J. I know it doesn't. I think we've covered a lot. I think we've only scratched the surface, though. I mean, I think, why is gaming a feminist issue? It is the reason that we're doing Gaming the System. I mean, all of the things that we're talking about, I think, are, really important, and I think they all impact on that topic. So I think we're talking about different things every fortnight, and I think they're all feminist issues. And I think I love gaming, I enjoy gaming, I want everyone else out there to get gaming, and I don't want people to feel that they can't because they feel like it's a male dominated area. I don't want that to be the case, and I want people to be able to enjoy it, and I want people to be comfortable with their kids enjoying it and their grandparents enjoying it, you know. So I'd say that's.
I think that's the nail on the head for me there. For me, the reason why I care about feminism and gaming together is because I have too many friends who don't feel safe gaming, who don't want to game, don't think gaming is for them because of the environment that has been created, and I want to change that. Matt, what about you? What else have we not mentioned?
So there was one thing you, when I missed this parallel completely, and it's so poignant and timely, of saying that the patriarchy says to you that you don't belong here. This isn't your place. And how that exists in gaming, exists everywhere, and has been shown so profoundly and horrifyingly over the last few weeks with Sarah Everard's horrifying murder, is that message spreads to the streets of the country as well. The streets of the country are filled with the voices of people saying, you don't belong here, you need to stay inside to stay safe, because you're not safe out here, because you don't belong here. And if that message exists on the streets, it means it's going to exist everywhere. So it's a sign of this through line throughout the entirety of society, that says that women don't belong anywhere. They are meant to be bolt-ons to the male world. So that's really what that really brought up in me, that thinking of not belonging, because that thing of belonging, I think so many people feel it. And if a cisgender straight white man, able-bodied, feels it, they can feel it just as like authentically, but it's not going to be because of society coming down on them, whereas everything else, society is piling on top of any insecurities they might have and telling them that it's your problem. There's nothing wrong with society. Society is working the way it's supposed to, and you don't fit in. So that's the serious side. On the slightly more fun side.
Oh, good, because I was going to have trouble segueing from that.
Yeah, it's dark. So yeah, that's why it's important that we talk about this. But so on a funner point, thank you, Alex, for giving me an opportunity to bring this in. You said flash in a pan earlier.
Yeah.
Just before, about worrying that that's what the last few weeks of violence against women really being brought into forelight, and the Women's Equality Party absolutely shining and leading the way in going, hey, there are answers to all these. It's not just, oh, what can we do? Yeah, we've got answers. This is what we exist for. So that's what the Women's Equality Party do with our incredible leadership team and everyone else who supports it. You said flash in the pan, and you're worrying that it dies down. But I think it's different, because a flash, if a pan flashes, then it just dies down of its own accord, because that's what happens to energy. I watched a video earlier today about what would happen if you dropped the biggest nuclear bomb ever into the bottom of the Mariana Trench, the very deepest part of the ocean. And literally what happens, it explodes and bursts out about a kilometre and then goes, because the ocean crushes it back down. And I think that's a more appropriate description, because I think what the ocean is, that's what propaganda does. It doesn't just, if a nuclear bomb explodes on the surface, it explodes everywhere and it lasts forever. If it happens under the water, it just gets compressed down. And that's what propaganda does. It's the fault of propaganda that messages and stories get crushed down. So that's the thing I'm taking, what I was saying earlier about propaganda, which I'm so interested in. Those are the things I wanted to reiterate and talk a little bit more about. But wild card question time to bring us home.
I did have a side point. I was just
Yes,
it's kind of a side point, but it's about barriers to gaming in general. And I find that some of my friends, both male and female, find they don't have time for gaming. And I think it's kind of a reflection of perhaps our capitalist patriarchal society, that we're always pushed to be working, doing constantly. We don't have time to do anything fun. and perhaps women more so than men, because women have a lot of other responsibilities in society. They have a caregiving role, etc., etc. So naturally, they would have less time to do fun things like gaming, which does require many hours if you're devoted
Oh, yeah.
to it, of course,
Such
like
an
any good
important
hobby.
point. Yeah.
No, I think that's hugely important, because it's something that strikes me a lot of the time, is that I know so many people who don't have any fun. And I know that sounds stupid, but I know that they are working or volunteering or caring all day long. And, you know, there is, so Valheim, I was just opening it up to tell you how many hours I have managed to rack up. So we all know this game only came out about 6 weeks ago. I have got 103.9 hours on it, which I'm partly embarrassed about. But I know that so few people are able to make that time in their life. And when I quit teaching, it was a big thing for me that I haven't had any spare time, and I am going to make time to have spare time to do fun things. And I think society doesn't value how important play and relaxation and spare time are into keeping you sane, full stop.
Absolutely.
So I'm very glad you raised that, Alex. That's brilliant.
Okay.
Oh, now I've gone about that for hours now. Right, anyway, rant. So, wildcard question. Haha. So this is essentially just an excuse, because I've got some pictures for you today, guys. I didn't tell you because it's like, you know, you didn't get to bring an image, but I got to bring an image, which is, I want to show you about this. Now, Alex and Matt, you're going to be too young to remember the New Zealand story. But Jem, do you remember the New Zealand story?
No.
Oh, right, okay. The New Zealand story was one of the greatest games ever made, right? And it was possibly, look at that. Look at those graphics.
Oh, I recognise that, though.
That was, I mean, you know, I felt like when I was a kid, this was the best graphics I had ever seen. This was the most exciting game I had ever seen. I still remember this boss. I remember this perfectly. It's just like that classic thing. So I thought what would be fun, because I wanted to show you pictures of New Zealand story, was to ask you, what was the first video game that you really loved and why? What's like your earliest memory of a game that you loved? Because New Zealand story for me is, you've got to remember, I was playing on an Amstrad CPC 360. I was having to load up a cassette for about 20 minutes before I could play this game if I wanted to play it. I was playing it on a green screen as well. My friend had a color monitor, and like getting to see this on color was like, what? Having been playing it on green screen for ages. So it was just like, but I was like, what? Let's learn a little bit more about our team. What was the game that you, as a young little early gamer, what was one of your and Jem, I'm specifying video games here, and I'm not allowing muds. I'm just putting
Sorry, I've got one in mind. Just barely remember it.
Okay, well, I'll come to you first then. Go on, Jem. Let's go back down to nostalgia.
In the olden days. No, I did play Paperboy, but I can't remember anything about it, so I can't talk about that. But the one that I do remember was Dungeon Master. I think it was Dungeon Master. There was a later one called Dungeon Keeper, so I always get them mixed up. But it was Dungeon Master, and it was you just walked around a dungeon, but you could only see it from. See, I should have sent you a picture because I'm
finding a picture first. I'm that good.
But basically, like, you just saw like the room in front of you, and then you could turn to the right or the left or go forward, and it was all just tunnels, and occasionally, yes, that's the one. And you had to remember like combinations of words, so you could do like a spell, and so there was a lot of note taking, and it was awesome. And I played it through when it originally came out. I don't know when that was, but I remember being little. And then I played it again when I was older, because my boyfriend at the time had an old Amiga that he had kicking about, and we fired it up on that, and I played it again through a summer when I was about 18, and that was so much fun. It was just as much fun the second time around. And I did actually download a very similar game, I think it's based on it, I can't remember what it's called, onto my phone just to play, because I was just like, oh, I love this game. It does look really rubbish though when you look at those graphics now. It just like but at the time I remember it was like a proper dungeon and the monsters were proper, they were actual bats and things, and it was really scary. But now obviously
this looks cool. I'm terrified.
The
Mummy. Alex, what game did you love when you were younger and why?
You're probably going to all know the answer to this because I've mentioned it several times before. You should set up a tally. But it's Tomb Raider 2, and specifically the very first level, which is the Great Wall, because we got the demo for it from PC Gamer, and we collectively, as a family, spent 6 months trying to figure out how to get out of the first little area at the bottom of the cave, because it's a really complicated jump. You have to jump specifically at this one spot diagonally in the wall and then jump back to land on top of the platform that's higher up, but we couldn't figure it out for 6 months. So we were just wandering around in the little pool at the bottom getting attacked by a tiger, and then like seeing the helicopter fly overhead, the camera would snap up to it and Laura would look up at it, and yeah, it was just very atmospheric. And when we eventually solved it and got out of the cave, we were like, this is the game for us. And it went from there. Yeah, and I was about 6 at the time.
Didn't give up. I mean,
no. We had to figure out, because we knew there was obviously more than the first area at the very bottom.
I had Ghostbusters 2 game back on my Amstrad again, and I could never get past the first level. And like I probably tried that for years because there's nothing else to do. But there's no internet there. You can't look up an FAQ. You can't go on YouTube. And sorry to mark old woman Caroline, but kids
I feel like gaming was much more hardcore back when we were younger, wasn't it?
So Matt, I'm wondering if you are going to say something similar to what Ketch has said here. In terms of, I was just guessing that you might be interested in Pokemon as being your I was just a guess, but no, tell us about what game you loved as a kid.
So thinking of like feeling wise, I think Rome Total War was a massive part of my childhood. I must have probably one of the first games that I must have spent probably 100 hours plus playing, and just the joyful expansion of power and conquering the world. And I'm extremely ambitious. So when I was young, that was a really nice conduit for my wanting to rule the entire world, because you could, and I've got this I'm not OCD in any way, but I love patterns and having things all set up in nice rows, and making the entire map green when I was I think I played as normal, conquering the entire world. And all the cheats you could do, you could press I think it was the F2 key, and then type in loads of things so you could have an army of 24 elephants fighting an army of another 24 elephants. So yeah, I think that has a really nice warm place that it makes me feel when I think about it.
I love the Civ games, and I've always thought I really should get into Rome, and I have actually bought them all on Steam, and still haven't got around to actually playing them, because I really should. But anyway, I think I like these little insights into who we are as gamers and stuff, because it's all very well us sitting here going on about intersectional feminism and all that stuff, but it's nice as well to have a reminder that we are just gamers. We are just normal gamers, like any other gamers. We just happen to also be feminists, and we're not the only ones out there, I suspect. And also, I have to say, Ketch, I'm bringing that back up again because Sonic the Hedgehog, very important game for me, but at a slightly different period in my life because it was the Dreamcast. But this isn't just the Caroline show, so we'll leave it there. And we have sadly run out of time. So next time we will be talking about accessibility and disability in gaming, and we will be on, that will be in 2 weeks' time. We have stuff every Thursday. Somebody will be streaming a game next Thursday. God knows who. One of us. And share, and subscribe and ring the little bell. What we should practice, not on air, not when we're live like this, is that one of us says like, the other one says share, the other one subscribe.
Oh my God.
We'll try and coordinate that next time.
That's going to go so wrong.
The system, and thank you for watching. Bye.
Bye.